If you're looking to melt fat, lose serious weight, I'm talking about up to 50 pounds in less than 3 months, I'm gonna share with you the 5 golden rules to follow for fat loss. Some of these might be controversial, but as a former obese man at 250 pounds, I was able to get as low as 170 pounds from 34% body fat as low as 6% body fat. Not only have these rules worked for me personally, but I've been teaching it for 17 years all across the globe, and I've applied it to thousands of people, men and women, all different ages, and they work really fast. So let's start with the first golden rule to follow. That's gonna be calories in versus calories out doesn't work. It's a myth. When we think about calories in versus calories out, it sounds like it makes sense logically. Your body burns a certain amount of calories, you eat a certain amount of calories, and as long as you eat less than you burn, you should lose weight. And it does work short term, but it fails 99.99% of the time long term. If calories in versus calories out worked, then we wouldn't have millions of people who go on and off diets, who go through weight loss resistance, yo-yo dieting, time after time. Unfortunately, we have doctors and nutritionists and dietitians and fitness pros telling you it's all about calories in versus calories out. And you know what? I was guilty of this many years ago. I used to do seminars at my CrossFit gym that I used to own, teaching people the science of fat loss. Here's your total daily energy expenditure. That's the amount of calories you burn just sitting on the couch. And let's calculate how much food you're eating, and let's put you in a deficit. Let's put you in a 500 calorie deficit every day until we equal 3,500 calorie deficit, which is 1 pound of fat loss. And the tricky thing is that it does work short term, but the body's very smart, the metabolism adapts, and it wrecks your hormones. You gain the weight back, and then it makes it more difficult to burn that fat again. Chances are you watching this right now or listening to this have done the old calories in versus calories out, and you saw some benefits in the beginning. But I'd put my money on it that you gained the weight back, and it created hormone problems as well. You see, you can't outsmart the metabolism this way. When you reduce your caloric load, especially over extended periods of time, your metabolism will slow down to match that energy. That's because the #1 priority for your human body is survival. So if your energy input and consumption is decreasing and decreasing, your inner physician, the innate intelligence, will say, whoa, we need to also decrease the amount that we burn, and it matches the input coming in over time. We're designed this way. This is because of famines back in the day. Our ancestors didn't know when their next meal was coming. We're designed to put on fat, store fat during times of famine. Fast forward to today, we don't have famines. We have Uber Eats and DoorDash in our refrigerator, but the metabolism doesn't understand that. We're hardwired for the old school. The body will adapt to burning fewer calories when you go on a caloric restriction diet over time. But it's not just the frustration of gaining the weight back when you just focus on calories. It's what it does to disrupt your hormones and make you feel miserable. There's a couple of key things that happen when you just focus on calories. That is, #1, a hormone called leptin. Leptin is a hormone responsible for signaling to your brain and your stomach, you're full. Put down the fork. Hey, no need to go to your pantry and eat the Oreos. You feel full and satiated. With caloric restriction, your leptin levels drop, making you hungrier and more prone to overeating. You feel miserable. And sure, you could have some willpower in the beginning, but your hormones will win out over time. Then we have the other hormone called ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone, which tells you pick up the fork, eat that food, go get the Oreos, go eat those Cheetos. Ghrelin increases over time with periods of caloric restriction. This means people who cut calories drastically end up fighting constant hunger pangs and cravings. This is your body's way of forcing you to consume food because it doesn't get that you're trying to lose weight on purpose. Do I think calories matter? Yes. Do I think they're the most important thing? Absolutely not. It's all about hormones and cell inflammation. And not all calories are created equal. The quality of the calories you consume are way more important than the quantity of them. When you consume calories from sugar or processed carbohydrates, the hormonal response that happens afterwards is very different than consuming whole foods from protein and fat. And it could be the equal amount of calories that you consume with these examples, but the process that happens inside of your body are dramatically different after you consume them. Sugary foods and high carbohydrate diets spike insulin, which is an energy sensor, tells your body to store fat, especially the visceral fat around your stomach. Protein and fat, even if the calories are equal, does not really spike insulin as much. When you eat more protein and fat, these are slowly digested. You manage your blood sugar and insulin levels, which is gonna help you have stable blood sugar levels, means your energy levels are gonna be stable as well, and you're gonna feel full and satiated. The perfect example on how calories in versus calories out does not work is the TV show The Biggest Loser. You might have watched that show. It was really popular here in the United States. I'm sure there's different variations of them in different countries. But in this show, they had participants who were obese, and they put them on an extreme regimen of caloric restriction, so reducing their caloric intake, and then extreme exercise to increase their caloric energy burning. And what we saw was very fascinating. Now, in a 2016 study published in the Journal of Obesity, 14 former contestants from The Biggest Loser were followed 6 years after the show. Despite their dramatic weight loss during the competition, nearly all had regained the majority of their weight. And here's the crazy thing, their metabolic rates had plummeted. Their bodies were burning fewer calories than expected for their size, and this persisted long after their caloric restriction ended. They measured their leptin levels. Remember that hormone that tells you you're full, stop eating. This hormone dramatically decreased over time, making it difficult for the participants to feel satisfied even with adequate food intake. 5 out of the 14 contestants ended up weighing more than when they started the show. This is the reason why there's never a Biggest Loser reunion show, because it doesn't work long term, only short term. And that's the footage they aired on TV, but they're not showing what happens afterwards. So instead of just focusing on calories, it's more effective to focus on the following. Number 1, reduce insulin spikes. Eating a diet that's low in carbohydrates, higher in protein and fat will accomplish this. Number 2, prioritize protein and fat at all of your meals. Get at least 40 grams of animal-based protein at all of your meals. Number 3, focus on metabolic flexibility. That is the goal for every human being, to achieve what I call metabolic freedom. And we'll talk a little bit more about how to achieve that as we go through this lesson. Let's move on to the second golden rule to follow, and that is understanding that snacking does not rev up your metabolism, it destroys it, and it ages you faster than anything else. Every time you eat, especially foods high in carbohydrates and sugar, you spike glucose and insulin. This is the hormone that has many roles, but one of the roles is to take that excess blood sugar out of the bloodstream and shuttle it into your cells for energy. Now, when this happens from time to time, it's not an issue, but most people are snacking, they're grazing, they're eating throughout the entire day. There was a study done by my colleague, Dr. Don Clum. It was a patient population study, and it showed that the average American eats 17 to 23 times per day. They're grazing, they're eating every 2 to 3 hours, and every time you eat something, whether it's a snack or a meal, that's a meal to your body. You spike glucose and insulin, you start the digestive process. And every time you spike insulin, insulin is the bully of the block. Your fat-burning hormones are running away, they're hiding, they're scattered when insulin is called. And if you snack, you're calling insulin. And when you raise insulin, you store fat. When you drop insulin, you burn fat. Simple rule to follow. When insulin continues to be elevated, it leads to hyperinsulinemia, which is also called insulin resistance, and then eventually that leads to diabetes. And several studies show that your insulin levels can be elevated for 6 to 14 years with no change in your blood sugar or your A1C levels until all of a sudden, there's a dramatic shift in your blood sugars, and then you're diagnosed with prediabetes or diabetes. This is because insulin is screaming at your cells to take up the glucose, and that could happen for 6 to 14 years until you get burnt out. Essentially, it's like listening to music over and over and over at 100%. You become deaf to the screams of the music. Your cells become deaf to the screams of insulin. And once you're diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, you have a significant increase in cancer, about 20 to 30% increase in cancer, and diabetes leads to heart disease, amputations, kidney failures, and a whole host of other serious complications, not to mention obesity. Snacking accelerates aging. Constant eating promotes cellular duplication, a process where your cells are replaced with new ones. While cell generation is essential for growth and healing, excessive cellular duplication accelerates aging. The cell division is like running a copying machine. Every time a cell replicates, there's a small chance of an error. Over time, these errors accumulate, leading to cellular dysfunction and aging. So, eating every few hours pushes your body into a state of constant cell duplication, which accelerates the aging process. The body has a process called autophagy, which cleans out cells and regenerates cells, and it's really healing for the body and very important to achieve autophagy. This is where you actually have like let's talk about Pac-Man going through your cells, eating these inflamed senescent cells within your body. When you're constantly snacking and raising insulin, you're not achieving autophagy. They have an inverted relationship, meaning insulin goes up, autophagy goes down. Snacking also destroys your digestive system. The digestive system needs a break in between meals to recover and to fully process the food. Snacking all day doesn't allow your digestive system to take a rest, leading to indigestion, bloating, and even gut issues like leaky gut, and leaky gut leads to autoimmune disease. In a study from the University of Virginia, researchers found that after feeding a group of young, healthy college students an 800-calorie meal, it took their digestive system 14 hours to fully process the food. Now, if they had snacked or eaten another meal during that time, the digestive burden would have been compounded, leading to poor gut health. When you snack, you decrease your fat-burning mechanisms. The body has two main states: the fed state, when insulin is high and the body uses glucose for energy, and the fasted state, when insulin is low and the body switches to burning fat for fuel. Snacking keeps you in the fed state all day, which blocks your fat-burning hormones and signals to your body, store energy, store fat. In contrast, when you give your body a break in between meals, such as just eliminating snacking or practicing intermittent fasting, I'll talk more about that later, your body then burns stored fat for energy because insulin drops and it creates a switch gets turned on to signal fat burning for an energy source. The more often your body is in a fasted state, the more efficient it becomes a fat-burning machine, leading to sustained fat loss without hunger. Now, many people believe that snacking boosts your metabolism. Your dietitian may have told you that as well. This couldn't be further from the truth. The idea that eating frequently increases your metabolic rate comes from the thermic effect of food, which is the energy your body uses to digest and process food. While the thermal effect of food does increase after a meal, it's proportional to the size of the meal. Eating 3 meals versus 6 smaller snacks provided the same metabolic efficiency. But the difference is, with 3 meals, you're also giving your body more time to rest, lower insulin, and burn fat. The third golden rule is that fat adaptation is the key here. It is the king, the queen, and everything in between when it comes to sustainable fat loss. Fat adaptation occurs when your body shifts from burning sugar and glucose as its primary energy source to burning fat, and in some cases, ketones as well. Both dietary fat and stored body fat, by the way. You have an option. You could burn the fat in front of you in that plate of food, or your stored body fat. When you incorporate fasting and get fat adapted, you burn body fat. When you are fat adapted, your body efficiently taps into body fat for energy, meaning the visceral fat around your organs, your love handles, your hips. It uses it for energy, which not only promotes weight loss, which not only helps with sustainable weight loss, but it's a long-lasting energy source compared to the quick burning effects of glucose. Unfortunately, most people in today's day and age are sugar burners. It's estimated that 88% to 93% of Americans are sugar burners. They're essentially in a what I call keto deficiency, a fat burning deficiency. They're stuck burning sugar. That means their insulin levels are high because they're eating carbohydrates, processed carbohydrates, they're snacking, constantly raising glucose and insulin, and their body forgot how to burn fat for energy. Once you switch to burning fat for energy, getting fat adapted, which should only take a few days, by the way, I'll give you some tips on how to do that, it can access stored body fat for energy more easily. This means you can burn fat even while you're fasting or when you're not eating for extended periods of time, leading to steady and consistent fat loss. In contrast, sugar burners need constant fuel in the form of carbohydrates and snacks just to keep their energy levels up. When carbs run out, a sugar burner may experience cravings, irritability, fatigue, pushing them to eat more frequently. It's called hangry, hungry and hangry. Fat is a more efficient and longer lasting fuel source than carbohydrates. This means fat adapted individuals have more stable energy levels throughout the day without the typical crashes that come from relying on sugar. When you're fat adapted, it really helps with hunger cravings, and it allows you to avoid snacking in between meals and practice intermittent fasting because you're using your fat for energy, and you have tens of thousands of calories, and some of you have hundreds of thousands of calories in the form of energy from your body fat. So how do you become fat adapted? Easy. Number one, you want to reduce your total carbohydrate intake. You want to get it to under 50 total grams of carbs per day. Now, I wouldn't recommend doing this too fast. If you're consuming over 300 grams of carbs per day, then each day have a 25% decrease in your carbs until maybe on day 5 or day 7, you're at 50 total grams of carbs or less per day. Now, what you want to do at the same time is increase your healthy fats and your proteins. You want to stick with saturated fats and monounsaturated fats and animal-based protein. These are going to be fats such as avocados, avocado oil, olive oil, eggs, red meat, lamb, poultry, fatty fish like sardines, mackerel, and salmon. Also coconut oil, MCT oil, grass-fed butter, grass-fed beef, duck fat. These are healthy fats that lower inflammation and allow you to shift into a fat-burning state, especially as you're lowering your carbohydrate intake. By making this switch, your body should be able to produce ketones by day 5 or day 7. That is very important. Ketones are going to allow your metabolism to increase its metabolic rate, so you burn more fat just sitting on the couch, but it keeps your brain turned on, it keeps you satiated and full, it lowers inflammation. It's a fantastic tool, and most people have a keto deficiency. Now, it is important as you make this transition to keep your electrolytes and your water up. As you lower insulin, which is the goal here, you're gonna release a lot of excess water weight. So you're gonna look lighter, feel lighter, all good things, but your kidneys go through this sort of diuresis process where it sheds a lot of electrolytes, sodium, potassium, magnesium. So increase your electrolytes, take an electrolyte powder, take some potassium, magnesium, and sodium every day, especially those first 7 days here. Now, I just have to say, not all keto, we'll call it a keto diet, although keto is not a diet, it's a metabolic process. So many people do keto and they do it the wrong way. They're not eating enough protein, they're eating inflammatory fats like the polyunsaturated fats. And I wanna make this easy for you, by the way, so if you're really serious about losing this weight and keeping it off, and you wanna get into a state of ketosis and eat clean foods, I have personally worked with a food journalist for over 6 months, and we put together a recipe of what's called the keto recipe of the week. Now, these recipes are all anti-inflammatory. I handpicked every single ingredient. They taste delicious. They're quick to make. Personally, I don't like to cook because I want something really easy and healthy, and that's what this is. They don't have any of the inflammatory fats. They have low oxalate vegetables, and you could actually get a recipe of keto, fat-burning keto recipes delivered to your email inbox every week with our Keto Recipe of the Week program. Go to ketocampresrecipes.com. We'll drop a link for it down below. It's only $9.97 per month, 30-day money-back guarantee, cancel anytime. There's also an option to go for the annual, and you get even a bigger discount, so head over to ketocampresrecipes.com to learn more. The fourth golden rule is to test, do not guess. We made the case that your insulin levels need to be optimal in order to burn fat. Have you tested your fasting insulin? I think the fasting insulin is one of the most important blood tests that anybody could get. Definitely the most important blood test to see how healthy your metabolism is. And most doctors don't order it, they don't understand it. And here's the good news. You could request it from your doctor, your insurance might cover it, or you could pay out of pocket and it's very cheap. It's like $30 or $50 for a fasting insulin. Now, insulin, when it's elevated, it's going to trigger a metabolic cascade of disease, high blood pressure, obesity, insulin resistance, diabetes, cancer, heart disease. But if you just track that insulin and get it into the single digits, that's what you want to do. A healthy fasting insulin is in the single digits. 3 to 7 is optimal, but anything in the single digits. If you're over 10, let's say 10 to 20, you have signs of insulin resistance. Now, if you're over 20, you have full-blown insulin resistance. And what I said earlier, you could have insulin resistance for 6 to 14 years until your blood sugars do not change until that point, and then boom, you're diagnosed with diabetes. We don't want that. So don't guess, test. Go get your fasting insulin. Make sure it's in the single digits. And as you follow this protocol, get it done on week 1 and then get it done 3 months in, and you're gonna see it dramatically lower. How it works is you wanna go and do the blood test about 12 hours into a fast. So let's say, for example, if you finish eating at 8 p.m. at night, make your appointment the following morning at 8 a.m. That's a 12-hour fast. You wanna be about 12 to 14 hours into a fast before you get that blood test. On top of that, you might wanna also track your blood glucose levels. You could look at your fasting blood glucose, and there's a couple ways to test this. You could get a finger prick machine where you just prick your finger, little blood comes out, you put on a strip, put it into the machine, and it gives you your number. Or you could actually wear what's called a continuous glucose monitor, which is something you attach typically to the back of your tricep. It sits there for 14 days, and you use the app on your phone to get 24/7 reading of your blood glucose levels. That would be optimal, the continuous glucose monitor. But why I like the finger prick is because if you get something like a Keto Mojo, you could also track your ketones as well. And I'm gonna give you the optimal levels you wanna hit for a fat-burning state. So you might want to grab a pen and paper and write these down. Your fasting blood sugar levels, what's considered a healthy, optimal fat-burning state, is somewhere between 60 to 90 milligrams per deciliter. And if you use a Keto Mojo finger prick or a CGM, it'll tell you that. 60 to 90 is considered optimal. Now, once your fasting glucose is steadily around 126 or higher, you're considered diabetic, by the way. So track that. Now, there's also your postprandial glucose levels. The higher your blood sugars go after eating a meal, the more insulin is required and the more fat you store. If we could blunt that postprandial glucose response, we're going to produce less insulin, we're gonna burn fat quicker. So by testing your blood sugar levels 1 hour and 2 hours after eating, it'll show you what's happening here with your metabolism. Now, ideally, an hour after eating, you don't want your blood sugar levels to be over 120 milligrams per deciliters or higher. It should be below that. 2 hours after eating, it should be back to where it was before you started eating. So if you tested your fasting blood sugars and it was 85, and then you ate a meal, 2 hours later, it should be closer to 85. If it's 105, 120 or higher, that's showing signs of insulin resistance, and we've got some work to do. But by tracking this over time, you're gonna see that dramatically improve with the tips I'm giving you in this lesson. It's pretty cool. I'll drop a link for NutriSense, which is the CGM I use and recommend, and then the Keto Mojo you can get over at 𝙎𝙬𝘽𝙎𝑚achine.com, and I'll drop a link for that down below as well. And the fifth golden rule to follow is that ancient healing strategies work far better over modern quick fixes for weight loss. What are ancient healing strategies? These are health tips and health tools that have been around since humankind. They've stood the test of time. They work time after time. Your cells are designed to go with the flow here of ancient healing. Now, ketosis, ketones, being in a state of ketosis simply means you're burning fat for energy. That is an ancient healing strategy. There's nothing new about keto. It's just newer nuance, but it's been around for as long as humans have existed. Babies that are breastfed are naturally in a state of ketosis because that breast milk has saturated fat and cholesterol, and it helps the neurological development of that baby's brain. We're designed to burn fat. Fasting, intermittent fasting, is also an ancient healing strategy. Now, we already covered keto. I gave you the fat adaptation tips on how to get there. You have the keto recipe of the week program. Just eat those meals or get into ketosis. It's ketocampresrecipes.com. Let's talk about fasting as an ancient healing strategy here. Now, some people hear the word fasting and it's like asking them to hold their breath for 10 minutes, but I promise you, once you're fat adapted and do keto and then practice intermittent fasting, it works so well. It's such a 1-2 punch for burning fat, and you actually feel great during the fast. And I'm gonna give you a protocol on what I think is the best fasting schedule for serious weight loss. But before I do, allow me to share why fasting should be the tool in your shed, this ancient healing strategy called fasting. Now, there's other terms for fasting. Time-restricted feeding is another term. Time-restricted eating is another term. When your body is in a fasted state, so many incredible things happen. It's one of the best ways to remove the interference so your body could heal itself. It takes a lot of energy to digest food. We talked about the problem of snacking, but not just snacking, eating a big meal. Think about the last time you had a feast meal, Thanksgiving, Christmas, whenever it was. Was your first thought after eating that big meal, I'm so energized and focused, I'm gonna go get some work done, I'm gonna go exercise? No. Your first thought was like, oh my gosh, I'm going into a food coma. Let's watch the game and sit on the couch. That's because it takes massive amounts of energy and resources and blood flow to digest food. Now, one of the coolest things with fasting is when you don't eat food and you're not using all that energy and bandwidth for digestion, it creates something called energy diversion. You divert the energy that would have been used for digestion and you divert it to be used for healing. So if you have fatty liver, your body starts to pull fat from the liver, fat from the pancreas. If you have brain fog, you start to reset cells in the brain. You go through that process called autophagy. The self-cleaning process really ramps up during 16, 17 hours or so throughout a fast. And when it comes to fat loss, it'll accelerate your body's ability to tap into stored body fat. Now, there are two methods here to practice fasting that's going to get you some really good results with fat loss. The first one is called a daily 18-6 schedule. This means out of a 24-hour period, for 18 hours, you're in that fasted state. You're not eating food, you're not snacking. What are you having? Just your water, your tea, your coffee, no food, no glucose and insulin spikes. Then you have your 6-hour eating window. That's when you want to hit and consume your protein and your fat. You want to get at least 40 grams of protein at those meals. If your eating window is 6 hours, you could have 2 to 3 meals. High fat, high protein, low carb, meaning less than 50 grams of total carbs on those days. So what that would look like on your calendar is 12 to 6 p.m. eating window, have 2 to 3 meals, protein and fat focused, and then 6 p.m. to 12 p.m. the next day, you're fasted. You're pulling fat from your organs, you're lowering insulin, insulin, lowering inflammation, producing ketones, going through autophagy. Incredible things are happening. Now, on top of that, a 24-hour water fast is remarkable for fixing the gut, getting more autophagy, and more fat loss. I would recommend the 24-hour fast no more than 1 to 2 times per week. And how this would work would be, let's say you're done eating Sunday at 6 p.m., you would fast all the way until Monday at 6 p.m. Again, only having the water, the electrolytes, the coffee, the tea, no food for a full 24 hours. Do that twice per week maximum, or just once per week, and you're going to get the amazing benefits here. Now, there's a caveat here, and you're gonna like this tip because we talked about, in the beginning, I mentioned metabolic flexibility. What does that mean exactly? Well, I have an entire book coming out in 2025 with Hay House called Metabolic Freedom. The word metabolism simply means transform. That's what the Greeks call it, meaning you take a substrate, which is an available fuel source, and your metabolism transforms it into energy. Okay, so what are these substrates? What are these fuel sources? You have sugar. We mentioned that's not a healthy fuel source. We have fat from both the calories in your plate of food and body fat, great source of energy. Then we have just sunshine. Somebody who has a healthy, metabolically flexible metabolism, somebody who's metabolically free, could use whatever substrate is available at any time, burn fat, produce energy, and feel great. When I go on airplanes and when I travel, I don't eat. The flight attendants think I'm crazy. You sure you don't want this meal? You sure don't want this snack? I'm good. I don't want to be inflamed from eating with already in an inflammatory environment of traveling. I'm feeding off my body fat. I'm producing ketones. I feel great. This is metabolic freedom. That's what we want. But here's what I do, and you're gonna love this tip. I intentionally have a feast day at least once per week. Now, as you do this protocol and you start to lose weight, I would wait 30 days to do this, and then after 30 days, do this once per week. Now, a feast day is a day where you switch from burning fat back to burning sugar for a day. This works really well because it creates metabolic adaptation and metabolic confusion. We know this. Every great personal trainer, every great fitness coach, and every great workout program understands muscle confusion. The workout is always changing. You're doing high repetition, low weight, and then high weight and low repetition. And then you're doing different muscle parts and body parts, and your body's adapting, and you continue to get results. We want the same thing with your metabolism with metabolic confusion. We burn fat for an extended period of time, and then we burn sugar for a day, and then go back to burning fat. So how do you burn sugar for a day? It's important to understand that this is not a cheat day. You're not having ice cream and pizza. You're having healthy carbs for a day. You're gonna bump up your carbohydrates from, you had it at 50 grams total per day, to over 150 grams for one day. I typically do it on a Sunday, but you can do it whatever day you want. The healthy carb is gonna be sweet potatoes, fruit, white rice. You know, the cool thing about that keto recipe of the week program is you go through it, we actually have recipes for what I call keto flex days, these higher healthy carb days as well. So for those who sign up, you'll get that as well. KetoCampRecipes.com. This allows your body to create a metabolic adaptation, metabolic flexibility. You burn sugar and then back to burning fat for the entire rest of the week. Burn sugar for a day and then back to burning fat. This prevents plateaus and stalls. It keeps the metabolism guessing so you continue to get results. This works like a charm, and bodybuilders knew about this a long time ago with their refeed days. This is very similar to that concept. Now let's get into some of the most commonly asked questions when I lecture on this topic. The first question is this: how long does it typically take to become fat adapted, and what are the signs that my body is shifting from burning carbs, sugar, to burning fat? Excellent question. For most people, it'll take 5 to 7 days to make this metabolic shift to burning fat instead of sugar. In other words, becoming fat adapted. I've taken over 5,000 people through my Keto Camp Academy, and that's the average of how long it takes to get there. What are the signs to pay attention to? You're gonna be less hungry, you're going to have mental clarity, you're gonna sleep better, less inflammation, less gut issues, and you're gonna lose some weight. I mean, within those first 7 days, you might lose 5 or 10 pounds. I've seen somebody lose 15 pounds in those first 7 days. So those are the signs to pay attention to. Happens pretty quickly as long as you're consistent with this protocol. The next question is, what types of foods should I eat to help my body enter ketosis and become fat adapted? Now, in my brand new book, Metabolic Freedom, I have something called the 2-2-2 rule. And this is what you want to do those first 7 days to really get your body familiar with burning fat instead of sugar. Every day, hit this 2-2-2 rule. You want to consume 2 tablespoons of grass-fed butter or grass-fed ghee. The second 2 is 2 tablespoons of coconut oil or MCT oil. The third 2 is 2 tablespoons of avocado oil or olive oil. Question I get asked is, should I have this in one sitting? That's a lot of fat for one sitting. Nope, you're having it throughout your meals. You're having it throughout the entire day. The salad dressings, the dips, the oils you're using to cook your food in. Do that just for the first 7 days to get fat adapted. And by the way, throughout those first 7 days, you're having 3 meals and you're not practicing fasting yet. You're doing your, let's say, first meal at 8 a.m., second meal at 12 p.m., third meal at 6 or 8 p.m. You're having 3 meals, no snacking in between. After you get fat adapted is when we practice the intermittent fasting routine I shared earlier. Next question is the ketogenic diet safe for long-term use, and are there any side effects I should watch out for during the transition phase? I'll answer the second part of that question. During the transition phase, yes, I mentioned what happens with the diuresis, the loss of electrolytes. And if you don't keep your electrolytes up, get high quality salt and electrolytes, you might get a headache, you might feel like you're getting sick, you might feel fatigued. That doesn't have to happen. On day 1, keep those electrolytes up. Get 1 to 2 teaspoons of sea salt. That'll do it. And you're not gonna notice those symptoms. It's called the keto flu, by the way. Now, long-term use of keto, some people do it and they thrive. Personally, I'm not an advocate of long-term continuous ketosis. I've seen it wreck hormones. Another reason why you're doing keto, such as epilepsy or other neurological conditions, yeah, you might want to do it longer, work with a practitioner. Somebody who's diabetic and really obese does a little bit longer, but I'm a fan of metabolic flexibility, going in and out of ketosis, not staying there forever. The next question is, can I still eat carbohydrates and become fat adapted, or do I have to cut out carbs completely? You can still have carbs, up to 50 total grams of carbs per day to stay in ketosis. Now those carbs are not from pizza or rice or even fruit. They're from non-starchy vegetables, green leafy vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, and many other healthy ones out there. We outlined all of them for you in that Keto Recipe of the Week program over at ketocamp-recipes.com. Next question is, what are the best ways to avoid insulin spikes while still feeling full and satisfied throughout the day? The best way is to have 2 to 3 meals maximum with at least 40 grams of protein at each of those meals, with a nice amount of fat that comes with the protein. So fattier cuts of protein, the ribeye, the fatty fish. That's gonna activate hormones like cholecystokinin, leptin, peptide YY, keeps you full and satiated, doesn't really spike insulin, all the things we're looking for here. The next question is there an ideal window or pattern to help reduce insulin spikes and promote fat loss? Yes, the 18-6 daily schedule of fasting with a 24-hour fast once or twice a week. The example I gave you earlier was a 12 to 6 p.m. eating window, but the research shows, and I don't share this all the time because it's more difficult for people to follow this, but if you really want to do it right, the research shows if your eating window was earlier in the day, this is called early time restricted feeding, you actually get more results, more fat loss, less insulin, less inflammation. So that would be, for example, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. eating window, 2 p.m. to 8 a.m. the next day, fasting window. The next question is this: what are some of the examples of ancient healing practices other than fasting and ketosis that promote fat loss and overall health? Ooh, I love this. All right, I'll give you some more. Grounding, it's called earthing and grounding, is another ancient healing practice that lowers inflammation and allows you to burn fat. This simply means going outside, putting your bare feet on the grass, the dirt, the sand, on earth. It's like taking a handful of antioxidants. It lowers inflammation. We have this earth, the crust of the earth, that's built up with these electrical charges from lightning strikes. And we build up free radicals and inflammation. We get charged up from EMFs and Bluetooth and wireless signals. And by putting our feet on the ground, we discharge these electrons, lowers inflammation. It's an ancient healing practice. If you do this 30 to 60 minutes per day, that could be a great pair with your ketosis and fasting. Then we have vitamin G. Vitamin G is an ancient healing practice, anti-inflammatory, fat burning, helps you produce GABA, oxytocin, dopamine. You feel incredible when you take it. It is the practice of gratitude. That is vitamin G. And studies have shown it lowers blood pressure, lowers insulin, lowers A1C. There's an immediate benefit. So get your vitamin G. There's no upper limit. Get it today. I don't have an affiliate link because it's not something you eat or consume. It's something you practice. And another ancient healing strategy, which I guess it's an ancient healing strategy, is walking. Walking is the king of fat loss. If you follow this protocol that I gave you today, the golden rules, and added in at least 10,000 steps per day, you're gonna lose rapid weight. You're gonna lower inflammation and insulin. And if you could time those walks for after your meals, even better, because it helps with that postprandial glucose response we spoke about earlier. So track your steps, get 10,000 steps per day. Not only will it help you burn fat, but there was a really fascinating study that showed that people who got 5,000 to 7,000 steps per day versus those who only got less than 3,000 steps per day reduced their risk of dying from all-cause mortality by 50 to 70%. Super cool. Now for fat loss, I'd bump that up to at least 10,000 steps per day. And if you want to be an overachiever and get even better results, get 14,000 steps per day. If you enjoyed this video, I want you to watch a recent video I made on the worst thing to eat in the world that contributes to visceral fat and an early death. The 7 worst things that contribute to visceral fat and the solutions for each of them. Microplastics are tiny particles, typically less than 5 millimeters in size. These particles can be ingested or inhaled and have been found in various environments, including oceans, soil, and even human tissues.